Welcome to Shadows and Clues. People ask me what it's like working with Marcus Blackwood. I tell them, imagine being invited to dinner on a luxury yacht, and by dawn, half the guests are dead. That's what happened aboard the Seraphine. 12 guests, one sealed invitation, and a host who vanished during the toast, leaving only blood and a cryptic note addressed to Marcus. For 2 hours, we were trapped at sea with a killer. No escape, no backup, no way to call for help. That night, the sea was like a mirror, dark, endless, perfectly still. But mirrors lie, and the sea remembers everything. My name is Eleanor Hayes, and this is the full story of the night I learned some invitations are really death sentences. Settle in. This is going to take a while. London, 1950. 2 weeks before the Seraphine sailed, a sealed envelope had been delivered to our London office. Theatrical, elegant handwriting. Mr. Blackwood, you are invited to an evening aboard my yacht, the Seraphine. I require your presence on matters of life and death. Reginald Whitmore. Marcus's face didn't change as he read the envelope, but as his fingers traced the edges of the paper with that unnerving precision, I knew something was turning inside him. Are you going? I'd asked. Whitmore isn't a philanthropist, he'd said quietly. He's a collector of secrets, and a man who has many secrets about himself uses the secrets of others as weapons. Then why is he inviting you? His gray eyes fixed on me. That's what worries me, Hayes. Now we're here. Aboard the Seraphine, dark, silent, shrouded in fog, where Marcus stands at the bow with a cigarette pinched between his fingers. He wore a long, coal-black coat and a felt hat that shadowed his eyes. He didn't trust invitations that arrived unannounced, and he trusted them even less when they carried the faint scent of sea salt and blood. The ship's door creaked open. I stepped out, my small notebook tucked under my arm. Marcus turned. Strange, isn't it? I said quietly. A dinner party in the middle of the sea, no harbor in sight. Strangeness, he replied, is often a harbinger of trouble. Let's see what kind of trouble awaits us tonight. We crossed the deck toward the warm light spilling from the great hall. Laughter hung in the air, fragile, artificial, the theatrical kind if you listened carefully enough. Inside, 12 guests sat around a long mahogany table. Silverware gleaming, crystal goblets reflecting the soft glow of the chandeliers. At the head sat Reginald Whitmore, tall and pale with a thin mustache. His pale blue, weary eyes rested on Marcus longer than politeness required. Mr. Blackwood, he cried. A Miss Hayes, I presume. How grateful I am that you've joined us tonight. I feared my invitation might be inappropriate. On the contrary, said Marcus, taking his seat. When an invitation mentions death, it becomes an offer I cannot refuse. Uneasy laughter rose. Whitmore's fingers tightened around his wine glass before he could compose himself. I scanned the table. There was Lady Vivian Ashcroft, the widow, adorned with pearls and pain. Beside her sat Colonel Beaumont, square-jawed and flushed. Further down was Mr. Hawthorne, the best-selling crime novelist. There was also a priest, a lawyer, the nervous-looking young secretary, Miss Claire Finch, and 2 business partners Whitmore never properly introduced. 12 guests. 1 server, and far too many smiles that didn't match their eyes. Dinner began with small talk, politics, investments, rumors of royal scandals. But beneath the clinking of silverware, attention murmured like an undercurrent. Marcus occasionally glanced at me, his eyes signaling me to take notes. I recorded every detail. The colonel's clenched fists, Lady Vivian's trembling hands, Mr. Hawthorne's too calm gaze. When the main course arrived, Whitmore rose from his seat. My friends, he began. Tonight marks 10 years since the founding of the Whitmore Foundation, an enterprise built on loyalty, courage, and ... forgiveness. He paused, his gaze sweeping around the table. We've gathered here not only to celebrate, but also to settle some accounts. No one spoke. Somewhere in the distance, a foghorn moaned a long, low, mournful sound. Whitmore raised his glass. To old friends, he said softly, and to the truth that drowns but never dies. The guests hesitated, then reluctantly raised their glasses. The crystals clinked, and then, as if on cue, the lights flickered once, twice, then the yacht plunged into pitch darkness. A sound of breathing, a chair scraping, a woman's sharp scream, and silence. I felt Marcus's hand on my arm. "Don't move," he whispered. When the lights returned 5 seconds later, Reginald Whitmore's chair was empty. His wine glass lay shattered on the floor, the dark liquid spreading like blood. A folded piece of paper rested on his plate, its edges damp, the ink running where something or someone had stained it red. Marcus stood slowly. I gasped. The paper was addressed in elegant handwriting to Detective Marcus Blackwood. The room descended into chaos. The guests began shouting, searching for the captain, for answers, for someone to explain what had just happened. Marcus ignored them. He took the note with his gloved hand and carefully opened it. Inside was a single line. "By the time you read this, I will be dead. Find out who did this." Art looked around, panic in my eyes. "He can't just disappear. There's nowhere to go." Marcus's tone was calm but firm. "There's always a place. The trick is finding the place where no one dares to look." He turned toward the door. "Stay with the guests," he told me. "Watch their faces. Fear reveals more than confession." The crew searched every corner of the yacht. Cabins, engine room, lifeboats, nothing. The ocean stretched on forever, black and unforgiving. I stood by the deck railing, clutching my coat against the wind, trying to make sense of what I'd seen, the flickering lights, the empty chair. The blood dot had Whitmore orchestrated his own disappearance? Or was I now standing in the middle of a murder scene adrift at sea? I looked up when Marcus returned from the captain's quarters. His face was expressionless. "Any word from him?" I asked. "No," he said. "But there's a problem. The ship's logs, the departure manifest. One name is missing, lost. There should have been 12 passengers, not including crew," he said quietly. "Only 11 are registered." I frowned. "So who's the 12th? "That," Marcus said, his voice dropping to almost a whisper, "is what worries me." He turned and scanned the deck. The fog was closing in now, swallowing the horizon. Somewhere below, intrusively, the gramophone began playing the same eerie melody from Dinner Dot as time goes by. Have you ever felt that moment when everyone's smiling but someone's performing? That's when the story starts to shift. Suddenly, a voice rose from the aft deck. A crew member was shouting, breathless, "Sir, there's something in the water." We ran aft. The lantern's light flickered across the waves. Something pale bobbed gently near the surface. It was a glove-thin leather. Soaked through and beneath it, the faint gleam of a pocket watch chain. Marcus knelt and pulled the chain from the water. The chain was neatly broken, the end bent as if torn away by force. Attached to it was a small gold pendant bearing the initials RW. He straightened, his eyes narrowing. "It didn't fall," he murmured. "It was thrown." My voice trembled. "So someone on this yacht planned this perfectly," he finished. "And they think they've hidden the body." He pocketed the chain. "But bodies have a way of surfacing, Miss Hayes, and so do secrets." As they turned to leave the deck, a shadow passed through the fog. A faint sound of metal on metal echoed from the lower cabins. For a moment, I thought I saw a figure standing near the stairwell, watching us motionlessly. When I blinked, it was gone. As the night deepened, the fog thickened. The lanterns burned low, their light barely penetrating the gray curtain. The sea had become restless, its rhythm beating against the hull like a faint heartbeat. The guests had gathered again in the yacht's sitting room, restless and pale, their voices overlapping like bees trapped in glass. The air smelled of perfume, sweat, and fear. Marcus stood by the fireplace, his silhouette etched in the shadow of the flickering flames. I sat by the door, my pen moving rapidly across my notebook. Every detail mattered now, every word, every tremor of a hand, every lingering glance. "Are you seriously suggesting that one of us?" Colonel Beaumont began. His face flushed, the veins throbbing at his temples. "I'm suggesting," Marcus interrupted quietly, "that a man who vanishes in the middle of dinner has either planned his own death, or someone has planned it for him." A murmur echoed through the room. The novelist, Mr. Hawthorne, leaned forward, his sharp eyes gleaming behind his round glasses. "Surely you don't suspect all of us?" "I suspect everyone until the facts prove otherwise," Marcus said. "Including myself, at least for the sake of thorough investigation?" Lady Vivian's voice trembled. "Detective, please, I can't bear this." "Reginald is dead, I know it. He told me he was afraid of someone on this ship." "Who was he afraid of?" I asked gently. "He didn't say," the widow replied. "But he did say he would soon make some kind of confession, something to do with atonement." Marcus's expression hardened. Atonement often implies guilt. He walked slowly, the polished floor creaking under his boots. The gramophone in the corner hissed softly, its needle drawing an endless loop of static. It was maddening, the sound of something unfinished. He examined the guests one by one. Colonel Beaumont, fists clenched. Lady Vivian, trembling but theatrical, the kind of woman who performs even her grief. Mr. Hawthorne, observant and perfectly calm. And the young secretary, Miss Claire Finchpale, her eyes darting toward the exit every few seconds. "Miss Finch," Marcus said suddenly. The secretary startled. "You were sitting closest to Mr. Whitmore when the lights went out?" "Yes," she stammered. "Did you touch him?" "No, I mean, I might have brushed his arm, but ... And before the toast? I think he whispered something to himself. I couldn't hear it." "Try," Marcus urged. She swallowed. "It was like, they'll never forgive me." A heavy silence fell over the room. Even the crackling of the fire seemed to have stopped. Asterisk. A few minutes later, a crew member burst in, hat in hand. "Sir, starboard cabin number 3. Locked from the inside." "Who was assigned there?" Marcus asked. "Mr. Hawthorne, sir." All eyes turned to the novelist. His chair was empty. He'd been there only minutes ago. The crew led the way down the corridor. The air was humid, the walls dripping with condensation. I followed closely behind Marcus, clutching my notebook tightly. They stopped in front of the cabin. A faint light seeped from under the door. Marcus knocked. "Mr. Hawthorne?" No answer. He nodded to the crew. Together they forced the door open. Inside, a faint smell of salt and ink. The typewriter sat on the table, a page curled halfway inside. Sheets of paper lay on the floor, each covered with frantic, slanted handwriting. The window was open, the curtains billowing. But the room was empty. I walked to the desk and began reading aloud from the page still in the typewriter. "Truth sinks like a stone, but guilt always floats." I shuddered. "He's gone," I said softly. "Yes," Marcus muttered, "but not far." He picked up one of the scattered pages. A drop of moisture fell on the ink knot condensation. He touched it, rubbed it between his fingers. Saltwater dot, he walked to the open window. The sea breeze stung his face. On the sill were faint traces of something dark, boot polish mixed with salt. "He went out," I said. "Why?" "Perhaps to escape," Marcus replied. Or perhaps he thought the sea would forgive what humans could not. We returned to the deck. The fog had thickened so much that even the mast was half swallowed. The moon hung like a dull coin behind the veil. My breath came out white. What if Hawthorne killed Whitmore? Maybe he panicked and no, Marcus said. This was planned. Every step. He pulled the broken chain and gold locket from his coat. The killer wants me to see patterns, but not the truth. Then what do? We stop following their tracks, he said, and we make them reveal themselves. He turned toward the hall where muffled voices echoed from the doors. We'll gather them again, he said, but this time I'll be the one talking. The noise stopped immediately as they entered. Marcus stood in the center, his jacket still dripping with fog. Mr. Whitmore is dead, he began. Mr. Hawthorne is missing as well, I believe. That leaves 9 and 1 murderer. You have no evidence. The colonel shouted, Evidence? Marcus smiled slightly. You misunderstand me, Colonel. I didn't come here to prove anything. I came to watch. He began walking slowly, the thud of his boots echoing on the floorboards. Whoever killed Whitmore gained access to his private study. It was locked, but the lock had been tampered with recently. Only one of you possesses that skill. The lawyer, Mr. Finchley, turned sharply. The man was pale. I just repaired it for him last week. Is that so? Marcus said. And you repaid handsomely in cash, I presume? He asked me to destroy a contract, the man stammered. He said it would be dangerous if revealed. What contract? He didn't say. Lady Vivian gave a muffled laugh. Reginald always had secrets, she said, especially from those he loved. Marcus's gaze fixed on her. And yet you came aboard alone. Her eyes hardened. He insisted. Was he afraid of you, Lady Vivian? He was afraid of everyone, she snapped. But he should have been afraid of himself as well. Sometimes the truth isn't in what people say, but in what they refuse to admit. Look at their silences. That's where guilt lurks. Do you have things you can't admit to yourself? Now's the time to confess. A distant sound cut through the tension. A dull, metallic clanging from below deck stopped. Marcus turned quickly. Eleanor, stay here. But I followed without waiting for permission. We descended the narrow stairs, the air heavy with oil and salt. The sound came again, a chain scraping on steel. The lamps in the engine room swayed with the ship's motion. The engines pulsed quietly, steadily, vibrantly. But in the far corner, something caught the light, a wet footprint, leading toward the hold hatch. Marcus opened it. Inside, a single chest had been forced open. Inside was nothing, just a faint whiff of whiskey and a torn piece of fabric from a tuxedo. Whitmore's, I said quickly. Or the killer's, Marcus said. They've been here since dinner cleaning something up. He held the piece close to the lamp. Tiny salt crystals glistened on its edge. They weren't sea salt, but dried tears of blood. Someone's bleeding, I muttered. Then they'll have to show themselves soon, Marcus said, his voice low. They're enjoying the game. He looked up, his eyes catching a slight movement in the shadows above. Did you see that? I whispered. Yes, Marcus said. And whoever it was watching us. We hurried back to the main deck, but as we reached the stairs, the lights flickered again. Once, twice, then complete darkness. My breathing quickened. The ship's roar faded, then stopped. The silence was overwhelming, broken only by the rhythmic pounding of the waves. A scream pierced the darkness, high-pitched, full of terror, coming from the dining hall above. Marcus ran, pulling me behind him. We burst through the doors as the lights flickered on again, and we froze. Lady Vivian lay slumped on the table, still clutching her glass. The wine in it was black. The guests stood around her, faces contorted in horror. The lawyer dropped his glass. She just started choking. Marcus moved quickly, checking her pulse. Nothing. Her lips were blue, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Poison," he said coldly. "The killer has completed their second act." My hands were shaking. How? No one touched her glass. "Then the poison was put in long before dinner started," Marcus said. "But why her?" "Because," he said, standing up, "she knew too much." The ship groaned as the waves rose. Outside, thunder echoed in the distance. Marcus turned toward the porthole and saw it, a shape floating in the mist beside the yacht, pale, motionless. Dot, the missing novelist. Mr. Hawthorne floating face down, but when the light hit the corpse, Marcus's eyes widened. Dot, it wasn't Hawthorne. Dot, it was Reginald Whitmore. The fog had completely swallowed the horizon. There was no sky, no sea, just a gray infinity clinging tightly to the yacht. The air was thick with the sharp smell of iron and salt, and the water held the unmistakable stench of death. Marcus stood on the port railing, his lantern flickering in the fog. I was beside him, clutching my notebook, not knowing whether I was shivering from cold or fear. Below us, the waves lapped gently against the hull, and there, floating among the ropes, was the body of Reginald Whitmore. His pale face gazed upward, his lips parted, one hand clutching the torn pieces of his pocket watch chain. The water had made him weightless, like an empty shell floating on the sea. "Eleanor," Marcus said quietly, but I couldn't take my eyes off the corpse. I'd seen death before. I'd stood over Lucia's body in the theater, but this was different. We'd found Lucia on a dark stage. A tragedy, yes, but it also felt like stagecraft. Whitmore's body was raw and brutal. Saltwater hair plastered to his face, eyes half open, staring into nothingness. "Eleanor." Marcus's voice was harsher. I looked up. "Turn around. You don't need to see this." But I couldn't turn away, because that was part of the job, wasn't it? The price of working with Marcus? Seeing truth, not beauty, Marcus signaled to the crew. 2 men carried the body onto the ship. I turned around and put my hand over my mouth. "Bring him to the parlor," Marcus said. "Keep the others inside. No one leaves this deck until I say so." The men obeyed, their boots echoing through the narrow corridors. The sound faded, replaced by the slow rhythm of the foghorn, deep, sad, eternal. Finally, I managed to speak in a low voice. "He's been in the water for hours, hasn't he?" 2 at most, Marcus said. "No swelling yet. Whoever threw him overboard did so after dinner, not during the blackout. The note he left then? It was written before," he said harshly, "and left on the table to mislead us." He crouched beside the railing and examined the faint marks along the metal edge. The scratches were irregular, fresh. "Dragged," he muttered. "Someone dragged him here and then threw him. From the main deck. Yes, probably from that side, less visible than from the cabins." I followed his gaze. "That's Lady Vivian's cabin, isn't it?" "It was," he said. "Now it's a crime scene." The guests inside were pale and trembling. The shock of seeing Whitmore's body had stripped them of any remaining shreds of decency. Colonel Beaumont paced like a caged bull. Miss Finch sat trembling by the window. The lawyer, Mr. Finchley, muttered to himself, counting his breaths, his prayers, or his lies. Marcus entered quietly. The room fell silent. "Reginald Whitmore was murdered," he said. "He was alive after dinner and dead before midnight. Now we're stuck on this yacht with a killer who relishes precision." No one spoke. The fire hissed softly in the fireplace. Outside, the fog clung to the glass like a living thing. "I will ask questions," Marcus continued. "Answer truthfully. Lies only delay your safety and accelerate your guilt." His eyes moved from one face to another, methodically and hurriedly. I opened my notebook, my pen poised on the page. I knew how Marcus conducted these interrogations. First pressure, then silence. then an unexpected question. It always worked. Marcus paused before Lady Vivian's empty chair. Her body still lay draped over the table, a somber focal point of the room. You claimed Whitmore was afraid of someone on the ship, I said quietly. Marcus looked at me, motioning me to continue. Perhaps he was killed because he knew who it was. Maybe, Marcus said, but there are layers to fear. He might have been afraid of what he knew about her. He pulled a small key from his pocket. It had been found on Whitmore's body earlier. Its ornate design matched the monogram on Lady Vivian's jewelry box. He was carrying your key, he said softly. Either a token of love or leverage. I frowned. Leverage? He was blackmailing her, Marcus said. Whitmore wasn't a philanthropist. He was a collector of secrets. He turned to the others. Were you aware of these files? Did he have anything on you? The colonel nodded, his jaw clenched. Everyone had files, Finchley said quietly. Documents, photographs, copies of transactions. He called it insurance. Then these must be in the study below decks, Marcus said. And I think our killer has already paid a visit. The door to Whitmore's private study was locked. Its handle cold to the touch dot, Marcus examined the keyhole, fresh scratches, as always. He pulled a thin steel pick from his pocket. Do you often enter locked rooms? I asked. Only when the dead insist, he said dryly. The lock opened with a soft click dot inside. The air was heavy with cigar smoke and the faint sweetness of spilled brandy. The walls were lined with books, but half had been pulled out, their spines strewn across the carpet. An open drawer sat on the desk, its contents missing. Only one photograph remained. Marcus carefully picked it up. The photograph showed dinner guests smiling and raising champagne, glasses on deck earlier that evening. But one person stood apart from the group, the novelist, Mr. Hawthorne, his head slightly turned. His eyes fixed not on the camera, but on Whitmore. In the photo. Whitmore's expression was uneasy, almost fearful. He knew, I whispered. He knew something was going to happen. Marcus nodded. Hawthorne knew that too. He set the photo down and knelt beside the wastebasket. It was full of ashes, still warm. He stirred it gently with a pencil. Among the gray flakes on a half-burnt piece of paper were a few legible words. ... transfer ... Cayman. Life insurance ... Financial motive, I muttered. Money and fear, Marcus said. The two oldest motives for murder. Suddenly there was a noise from above. Running footsteps. Then a shout, Sir, there's someone on the upper deck. Marcus was out the door in seconds, his coat billowing behind him. I followed, heart pounding. The narrow stairs creaked beneath my boots as I climbed toward the foggy deck. The lantern's beam swayed violently in the wind. In the distance, a shadow darted toward the lifeboat's rigging, then froze in the glare of Marcus's lamp. Stop right there. The figure turned. It was the secretary, Miss Claire Finch. Her face was wet with tears, her hair disheveled by the sea breeze. I wasn't running, she shouted. I just needed air. Air doesn't usually require a lifeboat line, Marcus said. He approached with cold but determined eyes. You worked for Whitmore, didn't you? Yes, as his stenographer. But I was just typing letters. Letters to whom? To everyone, she whispered. Investors, friends, ... enemies. Did you type the invitation he sent me? She paused, then nodded. He dictated it. He said it was poetic justice. Justice for what? Her lips were trembling. He said the sea remembers everything, and tonight it would remember again. Marcus studied her face. The guilt there was real, but not a murderer's guilt. He turned toward the sea. The mist cleared, and somewhere beyond the railing, a faint light flickered. Once, twice, then vanished. Another ship? I asked. No, Marcus said. Something closer? Perhaps a reflection or a signal. The foghorn roared again, louder this time, like a warning from the depths of the ocean. Marcus's gaze returned to Miss Finch. "Go inside," he said quietly, "and don't leave that room again." When she was gone, Marcus exhaled deeply. "They're cracking," he murmured. "Fear always reveals the cracks. Do you think she's innocent?" I asked, terrified, he said. "And fear rarely kills. It hides but doesn't act. The killer remains calm somewhere in between." He turned back to the stairwell. "Come on. There's more than just bodies beneath this fog." Asterisk, when everyone is afraid, the quietest voice in the room is the one you should fear most. "Have you found the quietest person aboard the Seraphine? Is the killer really them?" Below decks, as I walked down the corridor toward the cabins, I froze. The radio room door, once closed, was now ajar. A dim red light flickered inside. Was that light on before? I whispered. "No," Marcus said, and the captain swore the transmitter wasn't working. We went inside. The air smelled faintly of ozone and burning dust. The radio crackled softly for static, then a faint underlying noise. ... "Viney ... Coordinates ... ..45 ... dead." I approached. "Did you hear that?" "Yes," Marcus said. "Someone's broadcasting or trying to." The static suddenly stopped. The light went dark. I slowly turned toward the corner, out of breath. Written on the wall in running ink were 3 words. Asterisk. The words on the wall ran down in crooked lines, the ink still wet. My hand trembled as I touched the lantern glass. "It's still dripping," I whispered. "Whoever wrote this was here minutes ago." Marcus's gaze scanned the cramped room. The chair beside the radio desk had turned slightly, as if someone had gotten up in a hurry. There was a slight depression in the cushion, a fresh weight. He crouched and traced the edge of the table with his gloved hand. The transmitter was sabotaged from within. The killer didn't want the signal to reach shore. A low groan rose from the hull. The yacht rocked slightly, and the overhead lamp swayed, making the ink gleam like dark water. "The sea knows," I repeated quietly. "What does that mean?" "It's a message," Marcus said. "For us or whoever is still listening." He tore a page from the radio log and carefully folded it. "Every crime has a voice, Eleanor. All you have to do is tune out the static until it speaks." The door to Whitmore's private study was locked. Its handle cold to the touch. Marcus examined the keyhole, fresh scratches, as always. He pulled a thin steel pick from his pocket. "Do you often enter locked rooms?" I asked. "Only when the dead insist," he said dryly. The lock opened with a soft click. Inside. The air was heavy with cigar smoke and the faint sweetness of spilled brandy. The walls were lined with books, but half had been pulled out, their spines strewn across the carpet. An open drawer sat on the desk, its contents missing. Only one photograph remained. Marcus carefully picked it up. The photograph showed dinner guests smiling and raising champagne, glasses on deck earlier that evening. But one person stood apart from the group, the novelist, Mr. Hawthorne, his head slightly turned, his eyes fixed not on the camera but on Whitmore. In the photo. Whitmore's expression was uneasy, almost fearful. "He knew," I whispered. "He knew something was going to happen." Marcus nodded. "Hawthorne knew that too." He set the photo down and knelt beside the wastebasket. It was full of ashes still warm. He stirred it gently with a pencil. Among the gray flakes on a half-burnt piece of paper were a few legible words. ... transfer ... Cayman. Life insurance ... Financial motive, I muttered. Money and fear, Marcus said. The 2 oldest motives for murder. Suddenly there was a noise from above. Running footsteps. Then a shout. "Sir, there's someone on the upper deck." Marcus was out the door in seconds, his coat billowing behind him. I followed, heart pounding. The narrow stairs creaked beneath my boots as I climbed toward the foggy deck. The lantern's beam swayed violently in the wind. In the distance, a shadow darted toward the lifeboat's rigging, then froze in the glare of Marcus's lamp. "Stop right thee." The figure turned. It was the secretary, Miss Claire Finch. Her face was wet with tears, her hair disheveled by the sea breeze. "I wasn't running," she shouted. "I just needed air." "Air doesn't usually require a lifeboat line," Marcus said. He approached with cold but determined eyes. "You worked for Whitmore, didn't you?" "Yes, as his stenographer. But I was just typing letters." "Letters to whom?" "To everyone," she whispered. "Investors, friends, enemies." "Did you type the invitation he sent me?" She paused, then nodded. "He dictated it. He said it was poetic justice." "Justice for what?" Her lips were trembling. "He said the sea remembers everything, and tonight it would remember again." Marcus studied her face. The guilt there was real, but not a murderous guilt. He turned toward the sea. The mist cleared, and somewhere beyond the railing, a faint light flickered. Once, twice, then vanished. "Another ship?" I asked. "No," Marcus said. He turned back to the stairwell. "Come on, there's more than was that light on before?" I whispered. "No," Marcus said. And the captain swore the transmitter wasn't working. We went inside. The air smelled faintly of ozone and burning dust. The radio crackled softly, first static, then a faint underlying noise. ... Find me ... Coordinates ... 45 ... I approached. "Did you hear that?" "Yes," Marcus said. "Someone's broadcasting or trying to." The static suddenly stopped. The light went dark. I slowly turned toward the corner, out of breath. Written on the wall in running ink were 3 words. The words on the wall ran down in crypt lines, the ink still wet. My hand trembled as I touched the lantern glass. "It's still dripping," I whispered. "Whoever wrote this was here minutes ago." Marcus's gaze scanned the cramped room. The chair beside the radio desk had turned slightly, as if someone had gotten up in a hurry. There was a slight depression in the cushion, a fresh weight. He crouched and traced the edge of the table with his gloved hand. The transmitter was sabotaged from within. The killer didn't want the signal to reach shore. A low groan rose from the hull. The yacht rocked slightly, and the overhead lamp swayed, making the ink gleam like dark water. "The sea knows," I repeated quietly. "What does that mean?" "It's a message," Marcus said. "For us or whoever is still listening." He tore a page from the radio log and carefully folded it. "Every crime has a voice, Eleanor. All you have to do is tune out the static until it speaks." We found the captain on the bridge, staring into the fog, his face gray and lined, his knuckles white as he gripped the wheel. "You shouldn't be here, sir," he muttered without turning. "She's very angry tonight." "She?" I asked. "The sea," he said. "She doesn't like secrets." Marcus approached. "Captain, were you aware that Mr. Whitmore had altered our course?" The man's jaw tightened. "Yes, he told me to deviate 20 miles from schedule. Claimed it was to avoid shipping lanes. But I checked the charts, he was leading us into a dead zone. No signals, no patrols. Why?" He said he valued his guests' privacy. "But that's not all." He pointed to the compass housing. The glass was cracked, a thin layer of salt surrounding it. Someone poured seawater on the navigation equipment. "Half my instruments are blind." Marcus frowned. "So whoever killed Whitmore wanted this yacht to remain unattended." "Controlled isolation. You're trapped," I said softly. "Precisely," Marcus replied. "It's a perfect stage." The secret drawer we returned to Whitmore's study. The damp smell of smoke still hung in the air. We returned to Whitmore's study. The damp smell of smoke still hung in the air. I ran my fingers under the desk. If he was keeping leverage on everyone, there must be more than just burnt papers. Marcus nodded. He pulled a small knife from his pocket and felt around the bottom drawer. A hidden compartment clicked open. Inside were 3 envelopes, each marked with a name. Beaumont, Finchley, Hawthorne, he read aloud. He opened the first. Inside, a military report stamped classified. Court-martial, I read. For misconduct, suppressed. So the colonel had a motive, Marcus said. The second envelope contained ledger's transfers to offshore accounts. Every line was in Finchley's handwriting. The third, Hawthorne's, featured only one photograph, a young woman on a dock, smiling shyly at the camera. On the back was a single word, Adelaide. Who is she? I asked. Hawthorne's wife, Marcus said softly. She drowned 3 years ago. Rumor has it Whitmore was there when it happened. That truth sank between us like an anchor. Revenge, I whispered. Perhaps, he said. But revenge is rarely limited to justice. It always demands company. A sudden burst of static came from the hallway, a sharp electric sound. We froze. It was the radio again, crackling to life. ... Blackwood. The voice was weak, distorted by distance. My heart pounded. Did it just say your name? I whispered. Yes, Marcus muttered. Someone is calling me. We ran back to the radio room. The speaker hissed, then fell silent for a second. ... You're next, ... Then silence. I stared at him, eyes wide. That wasn't an echo. No, Marcus said. It was a warning. He examined the transmitter. The power switch was still off. The wires had been cut earlier. It couldn't work. Impossible, I whispered. Or a deliberate illusion, he said. A killer with a taste for theatrics. He stood thoughtfully. They're not hiding in panic, they're performing. A shout from the deck broke the silence. We raced up the stairs to find chaos again. Guests had gathered near the railing, the colonel's coat hanging from the ropes, fluttering like a flag. Where? Marcus demanded. A crew member pointed down. He fell. We don't know if he jumped or was pushed. Marcus grabbed the flashlight and leaned over the side. The light cut through the mist, nothing but rolling black sea. No sign of a body. How long ago? Minutes. I clenched my fists. 3 people dead in one night? 2 dead, Marcus said quietly. 1 missing. And I intend to find out which is which. He turned to the group. Return to your cabins. Bar the doors. No one comes out until dawn. They obeyed reluctantly. The lawyer muttered a prayer. Miss Finch, weeping silently, whispered that the sea wanted them all. Later, in the dim light of the parlor, I poured tea with shaking hands. It clinked against the porcelain, the sound too loud. Do you think the colonel killed Whitmore? I asked. He had motive but not finesse, Marcus said. His violence is driven by anger. This crime was written like a sonnet, then Hawthorne. He had purpose and imagination, but he's either dead or pretending to be. He leaned back and studied the window. Small droplets ran down the glass like tears. Whoever's orchestrating this knows I'm here. They're trying to capture my attention. I frowned. So all these deaths are for you? Partly, he said. Whitmore's invitation wasn't just for me to attend, it was for me to perform. He wanted me to unravel the final act of his own story. That's madness. Genius and madness, he said softly, often dine together. Have you ever noticed that someone else has written your part in the story? And you're still reading your own lines? A bell rang from below deck, 3 short blasts. I jumped. What now? Engine room signal, Marcus said. Emergency. We sped down the corridor, flashlights in hand. The metallic smell of oil intensified as we approached. A crew member lay unconscious on the floor, still clutching a small key. He's alive, I said, kneeling. but injured. Look there, Marcus pointed. The fuel valves were half open. Someone tried to flood the fuel tank. A fire would have destroyed the ship. He examined the tool fingerprints dark on the metal. Grease bleeds through quality gloves, he remarked. Our killer is very clever. Another sound came from the far end of the corridor, a soft, rhythmic whisper. We moved toward it, each step echoing. The whisper grew clearer, a woman's voice humming a slow melody. As time goes by, my skin prickled. The gramophone isn't playing. Then someone is, Marcus said. We turned the corner and froze. The parlor door was open. Inside, a single candle burned on the piano. In front of it sat Miss Finch, back straight. Her eyes were open, glassy. Her lips moved to the song, but no sound came out. A thin silver wire stretched tightly around her neck. Glistened. I gasped. Marcus stepped forward to check her pulse. Nothing. Tucked under her hand was a note card, the same invitation that had brought them all here. On it, in Whitmore's handwriting, was written, "Every confession must be witnessed." Marcus slowly closed his eyes. He's turning confession into theater, he murmured. He? I asked. Yes, Marcus said. Whoever is orchestrating this is a man, and he's been guiding us all along. But everyone is either dead or missing. Not everyone, he said. The lawyer is still here. He turned sharply toward the corridor, but before he could move, a voice came from the doorway. Are you looking for me, detective? Finchley stood there calmly, gun in hand. The fog outside roared like thunder over the sea. Marcus looked into the lawyer's eyes. You won't shoot, he said calmly, won't I? Finchley smiled slightly. Reginald promised freedom. He lied. So I'm closing the deal myself. The hammer cocked. A gunshot rang out. The candle went out. Darkness for a moment. Nothing happened, no movement. No sound, only the slow drip of candle wax and the soft ticking of a clock somewhere behind the walls. Then a lull. Determined voice. Drop the gun, Finchley. The match's flame revealed Marcus Blackwood, calm and unwavering, his gloved hand holding the pistol steady. The lawyer's face, slightly orange in the glow, was weary and helpless, his eyes wide with a madness born of extreme guilt and insufficient sleep. Finchley hesitated. The gun trembled in his hand. You don't understand, he gasped. He destroyed me. All of us. This was supposed to end tonight. It will, Marcus said quietly. But not as you planned. My heart pounded. I hadn't even seen Marcus draw his gun. But there it was, in his hand, as natural as if it had always been there. He approached slowly enough for the man's eyes to lock onto his. I shifted behind the couch, my pulse pounding in my ears. You killed him, Marcus continued. You threw him overboard, made it look like suicide. But you weren't the one who tied the wire around Miss Finch's neck. The lawyer's eyes darted toward the door, even the slightest hint of surprise overwhelming his fear. I don't know what you mean. Marcus tilted his head. Of course you do, because you didn't work alone. A gust of wind blew through the broken window, scattering papers on the floor. The lantern flame dipped, and for a moment, Whitmore's portrait on the mantelpiece seemed to be grinning at them. All. Marcus continued, his voice firm. Whitmore invited each of you for one reason, leverage. You all had something to hide. But he made one mistake. He underestimated the one person he couldn't control. Who? Finchley asked. Mr. Hawthorne, Marcus said. The writer. I drew a sharp breath. But Hawthorne is dead. We saw his body. No, Marcus said. We saw a body, wearing Hawthorne's jacket, face turned away, shot through the cheek to avoid recognition. That body was the colonel. Finchley's face went white. My God. Hawthorne orchestrated his own death, Marcus continued. He killed Whitmore, used the chaos to slip below decks, and when the colonel discovered him, he silenced him too. Then he left us a spectacle, letters, blood, and a trail leading right to you, Finchley. The perfect scapegoat. But how do you know? I asked. Marcus pulled something from his pocket, a thin strip of silver wire. The kind that killed Miss Finch, found tightly wound on a spool in the novelist's typewriter. He literally typed out his confessions. Finchley laughed bitterly. You expect anyone to believe that? You have theories, not evidence. Evidence? Marcus said. You're standing in it. He pointed to a bloodstain near the wall where Finchley's bullet had struck earlier. The wood paneling had cracked, revealing a narrow gap behind it, small, but large enough for a man to crawl through. A service passage, Marcus explained. It runs between the cabins and opens near the lifeboat rigging. Someone was using it to move about undetected. He raised his flashlight toward the opening. The light caught barely perceptible movement within a shadow retreating from the light. Hawthorne, Marcus said softly. I'm still listening. Without hesitation, he drew his gun and fired a single shot into the passage. The echo was deafening. A cry rang out, then silence. Marcus gestured to me. Stay here. I grabbed his arm. Marcus, do as I say, Eleanor. He looked at me with that look sharp, decisive, undeniable. I clutched my notebook and nodded. He climbed into the void, the metal cold under his arms, and followed the narrow passage down. The smell of rust and oil filled the air. I followed after him, forgive me, but I couldn't leave him alone in that narrow tunnel. After 20 meters. The tunnel opened into a small storage area near the hull. A lantern was burning on the ground. Mr. Hawthorne sat beside it, blood on his arm, the gun lying next to him. He smiled slightly when he saw Marcus. You're faster than I thought. You made it very theatrical, Marcus said. A locked room, a disguised body, a murderer reciting poetry. Only a writer would choreograph a murder like that. Hawthorne laughed dryly and coughed into his hand. Whitmore stole everything from me, my wife, my peace. He drowned Adelaide while I watched from the shore. Said she slipped. I knew the truth, but no one cared. That's why I wrote this ending for him. What about the others? I asked, my voice trembling. Collateral, Hawthorne said, his eyes turning to me. He destroyed them too. They came seeking forgiveness. I condemned them. Marcus crouched beside him, his eyes hard. You killed 3 innocent people to avenge a single crime. Innocent? Hawthorne hissed. They all profited from Whitmore's blood money. You call that innocence? For a moment, only the pulse of the sea filled the silence. Then Marcus spoke softly. You had everything it took to make a great confession. But you forgot the last rule of good storytelling. And what's that? Every story ends where the truth begins. He raised his pistol, but Hawthorne had already moved. The novelist lunged for the fallen gun. 2 shots rang out simultaneously. I pulled at Marcus's arm, but it was too late. When the smoke cleared, Hawthorne leaned against the partition, his eyes glassy, blood pooling under his hand. Marcus lowered his gun, his chest heaving. You could have lived to write this, he said softly. Now I have to. I fell to my knees, my hands shaking. It had happened so fast, so suddenly. When we arrested Madame Rossi at the Opera House, there was at least process. Here. Just 2 shots here, then silence. Marcus put his hand on my shoulder. Eleanor, we need you to go upstairs. I nodded, but couldn't move. I looked at Hawthorne's body, that brilliant, sorrowful man, and thought what a waste it all had been. He wanted justice for Adelaide. Instead, he only created more death. Eleanor, Marcus said more firmly. Now, at dawn, the fog began to thin. The Seraphine drifted, her engines dead. Her decks littered with the ruins of luxury turned to tragedy. The surviving passengers only. 3 remained huddled together silently as Marcus dictated his report to me. My notebook was open before me. My pen rested on the page, but I couldn't begin to write. "Eleanor," Marcus said quietly. I looked up. His eyes were soft rare for him. "You need to write. It's part of the job." "I know," I said, but my voice was trembling. I don't know how to write it, how to put all of this into words. "Write as you see it," he said. "Write the truth. Emotions come and go, but the truth remains." I took a deep breath and began writing. Reginald Whitmore was killed by Charles Hawthorne for revenge, Colonel. Beaumont was shot and disguised as the murderer to divert suspicion. Lady Vivian was poisoned for what she knew. Miss Finch was strangled to maintain the illusion. Finchley is now the innocent scapegoat who survived. My voice trembled. "You sound detached." "It's the only way to finish it," Marcus replied. "Emotions blur the ink." I closed my notebook. "What about you, Marcus? What will you write next?" He looked toward the horizon where the first rays of sunlight were breaking through the mist. The sea shimmered pale gold, calm again as if nothing had happened. "Nothing," he said. "Some stories should remain drowned. Sometimes the sea buries not just bodies, but confessions as well. And perhaps that is mercy itself." As the rescue ship approached, its whistle echoing across the waves, Marcus stood alone at the bow. I was there too, silently. But I was there. In his pocket was the last page torn from Hawthorne's typewriter, stained and crumpled. He opened it once more. I leaned in to read, "To Marcus Blackwood, who has seen too much. Beware of invitations you cannot refuse. They always come back to you." We looked at the words, then Marcus let the paper drift in the wind. It danced once, caught the sunlight, and disappeared into the sea. The waves swallowed it, and the Seraphine sailed on by midday. The fog had completely cleared. The horizon was awash in blue, the sky achingly bright after hours of gray. The rescue ship's engines turned steadily and surely. I sat on deck with my notebook open on my knees. The wind turned the pages until it found the first line I'd written that night. The sea was like a mirror that night, dark, endless, and perfectly still. I smiled slightly at the irony. "Do you think anyone will believe what happened?" Marcus looked toward the receding yacht. "People prefer to see mystery become legend. They'll call it an accident or a cursed ship tale. Either way, it'll sell more newspapers than the truth." "What about the truth?" "It will sleep where it should." The ship's whistle blew. Seagulls scattered across the sky like torn paper. Marcus straightened his hat with that infuriating precision. "Are you all right, Eleanor?" I was surprised by this. Marcus rarely asked such direct questions. "I don't know," I said honestly. 4 people died, and I watched it all. I couldn't do anything." "You couldn't have done anything," Marcus said. "Hawthorne planned this long ago. Even if you weren't there, even if I weren't there, it would have happened. But maybe fewer people would have died, or more." He turned to me. "Don't carry guilt, Eleanor. Murderers make their own choices. You are merely a witness, and is witnessing enough?" "Sometimes," he said quietly, "bearing witness is the most important thing you can do." London, 1950. Rain fell in soft ribbons on the windows of our detective agency, Blackwood and Associates, off Fleet Street. The city was noisy again. Cars, footsteps, headlines. I walked in with a folded newspaper in hand. "They've printed the story," I said, laying it on the desk. "Philanthropist dies at sea. No mention of Hawthorne. No mention of us either." Marcus nodded. "Good." I studied him. "You've been quiet since we returned." He smiled slightly. "When the sea speaks, silence is politeness." I sat across from him. "There's something else." I opened a small envelope with neat handwriting on it. This arrived this morning. No return address. Marcus opened it. Inside was a single page written in black ink. Every confession needs testimony. The sea may forget that I do not. Below the words was a signature. He frowned. But Hawthorne is dead? Perhaps, Marcus said. Or perhaps a writer never truly dies until his story is finished. He placed the letter in a drawer and locked it. Let's have coffee. The world is boring without a little mystery. But as he put the letter in the drawer, I noticed something. Marcus's hand was trembling slightly. Just for a moment, not even a second, but it was there. Marcus. Blackwood's hand never trembled, but this time it had. That night, as rain whispered on the city rooftops, I sat at my desk and began writing this story. Marcus sat by the window, his hat pulled low, his cigarette glowing faintly. The reflection in the glass showed two ghosts, his own weary eyes and the shadow of the Seraphine floating over memory. While I wrote, he thought of Whitmore, of Hawthorne, of the relentless calm of the sea. He thought of my questions and the answers that never satisfied anyone for long. Marcus, I said quietly. Yes, that letter. Was it really from Hawthorne? He exhaled cigarette smoke. I don't know, but you know everything. No, Eleanor. He turned to me. I only see what people want to show me, and sometimes even they don't know what they're showing. A new case file lay unopened on his desk. A new invitation. Another dinner, he murmured. Another story. Outside, a deep and familiar foghorn moaned along the Thames, and somewhere far below, the river answered. Marcus crushed the cigarette into the ashtray. So be it, he said. Let the sea remember. And I kept writing, because that's my job. Marcus finds the truth, and I put it into words. And if these stories don't keep him up at night, at least they keep me alive. My pen moved quickly across the page. Its ink the only trace left behind. Whitmore's body, Adelaide's photograph. Hawthorne's last words, it's all here, on paper. Frozen forever, Marcus was right. Emotions come and then go, but the truth remains. And I, Eleanor Hayes, am witness to the truth. The night I wrote this story, Marcus said something to me. Eleanor, he said, I'm going to ask you what this work does to you. You mean, do I enjoy being exhausted? I asked. Seeing death, being afraid, interrogating suspects? No, he said. Seeing the truth and living with it. I thought for a long time. Then I said, the night I first saw Lucia Monteverdi's body, I understood something. Everyone has a story, and most of the time, that story ends in death because no one dares to write the truth. You dare, Marcus said, because someone has to. That night aboard the Seraphine, the night 4 people died, I learned something else. The truth isn't always beautiful. Sometimes it's ugly, painful, and unjust. But it still needs to be written because witnessing isn't just seeing, it's remembering. And as long as Marcus Blackwood keeps solving, I'll keep writing because that's who we are. And honestly, I wouldn't want it any other way. Eleanor Hayes, London, 1950.